Next up, we have Dr. Jeremy Marty-Dugas. Jeremy completed his PhD at the University of Waterloo under the supervision of Dr. Daniel Smilik. In 2017, his fun fact is that he won 5 free teas in a row during Roll Up the Rim at Tim Hortons. And the funny enough part is that he didn't even buy the first tea. A friend bought it for him. So that's some incredible luck. And with that, Jeremy, you can take it away.
Where is your smartphone right now? For many of you, I would imagine that it is within arm's reach. It's probably always within arm's reach. And what's interesting about smartphones and devices like them is that because of how close to us they always are, they have a unique opportunity to influence our psychology, our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors. And partly because of this, many people have started to become concerned about smartphone use. So whether that concern is about using it at the dinner table, its flip-flopping role in education, or the belief that it's causing our brains to rapidly deteriorate, some have even gone so far as to claim that the human attention span is now shorter than that of a goldfish, thanks to smartphones. Now, some of these concerns are more legitimate than others. That goldfish one is particularly dubious. But nonetheless, it can be difficult to tell how concerned we should be or what we should be concerned about. So I'd like to start by focusing on some documented issues as far as smartphone use and our psychology. So I tend to focus on attention, but I'll talk about some cognitive and emotional issues that people have. And so as you can see here, smartphone use has these relations with things like depression and anxiety. So people who use their smartphone more frequently also tend to report feeling more depressed or anxious. Similarly, greater, more frequent use of your smartphone is also associated with more attention lapses and errors, as well as stress and mind wandering, another form of inattentive cognition. And so in general, we would prefer to be attentive and feeling less depressed. And so if you look at it this way and sort of take it at face value, it can seem like the smartphone has a pretty negative impact. But there are factors that are not always accounted for when it comes to smartphone use and thinking about these relationships. One important factor is what I like to call absent-minded smartphone use. And this is something you've probably experienced, perhaps when you come home from a long day. It is behaviors like endless scrolling, habitual checking, or losing track of time while you're using your phone, perhaps even opening your phone to do one activity and winding up doing something else altogether. You may even forget what your original purpose of using the phone was in those sort of instances. So just in general, absent-minded smartphone use is using your phone for no particular reason, or generally using it without awareness, no specific goal in mind. And so, as it turns out, this is something that can be very important to measure when trying to understand the relation between smartphone use and many of these negative outcomes that people are interested in. And when we do measure it, it turns out that these relations with all these negative outcomes are not driven by smartphone use per se, but they're actually driven by absent-minded smartphone use in particular. So what this means is what's critical is not just how much you use your phone in general, but the way in which you're using your phone. And what this suggests is that by using our smartphones with purpose and intention, we might be able to avoid many of the negative outcomes that are associated with this kind of mindless use. Now, unfortunately, this is something that might be easier said than done. It's fairly hard to avoid using your smartphone in an absent-minded way without just avoiding your smartphone altogether. And part of the reason for this is because of the way that we form habits. So I'd like you to think back to when you first learned to tie your shoes. So that was something that you had to really concentrate on and be very intentional and remember all the different steps. But as you did it more and more often and got better and better at it, it started to become more automatic or habitual. And now it's something that you can do without a second thought. You know, you're not really that aware of all these individual steps as you're tying your shoes. You're doing it without awareness. And this is the same with any sort of behavior. As you continue to do it over time, it becomes more and more automatic. And so this is the same with your smartphone. The more you use your smartphone, the more you tend to use it in an absent-minded way as well. And what makes avoiding absent-minded smartphone use even more difficult is that, unlike our shoelaces, smartphones are actually designed in a way that promotes this kind of absent-minded use or mindless scrolling. So this is Tristan Harris, who you might be familiar with. He was a product manager at Google, and he's now somebody who spends his time trying to warn and inform people about these different devices and about what the goal is at many of these companies who are making phones or different apps. And that is to, as he puts it, to leverage their knowledge of our psychology and of neuroscience to make us spend as much time as possible looking at that device, regardless really of whether it is benefiting us or not. And so that's something that is important to be aware of, is that somebody has designed the device in a way that sort of co-opts your attention system. They try to hijack your attention system or hijack your brain. Brain hacking is one of the terms that people will use. And here you can see he sort of describes how it works. And it's something that's actually relatively simple to do. So can we avoid absent-minded use? It does seem like something that is difficult, especially when the odds are stacked against us like this. But I think that first, knowing about this kind of design is an important piece of knowledge that can help us try to make sure that our phones are working for us rather than the other way around. And so just to maybe give you another little piece of advice, something that you might find helpful, something that I try to do in my life to avoid this kind of mindless use. One is by making your phone slightly harder to access. So if you're at home or driving in the car, putting it out of reach and out of sight is a way that you can avoid not only the distractions of it, but also the distraction of the temptation to use it. You have to go somewhere very intentionally to get your phone, and that can help you avoid that sort of habitual mindless checking or use that might go on. Another is to change your passcode. Entering your passcode correctly is something you do very automatically and without a lot of effort or without awareness. But if you change it and get that message that you've got it wrong, that interrupts that automatic behavior, and it can give you a moment to think about whether you really need to or even want to use your phone at that time. I thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the talks.